Hello guys, welcome to the channel.
Uh-huh.
So today we're doing a deep dive into something I think every single person learning English has struggled with.
Oh, absolutely. The frustration is real.
Exactly. It's that feeling when you spend hours trying to memorize new words, you feel great, you feel like you've got them down.
And then a week later?
They're gone.
Right.
Just vanished. It feels like you're trying to hold water in your hands, right? That feeling is just awful.
It really is. And that feeling, that sense that all your effort was wasted, it's completely universal.
Yeah.
I've been there. I'm sure you have.
Oh, many times.
And I know everyone listening has felt that cycle of cramming and then poof, forgetting. But, it really doesn't have to be that way.
That's what we're here to talk about.
Yes. Today, we're going to get into the practical science-backed methods that you can use yourself. We want to show you how to move those new words from that very fragile, short-term memory.
The leaky bucket.
The leaky bucket, exactly. And get them into your permanent, reliable, long-term recall. Our whole mission today is to give you strategies for you and your notebook. That's it.
No apps, no courses, none of that.
Nope. This is all about how your brain is actually designed to learn.
I think, actually, if I'm being honest and look back at my school days, my whole experience was just the textbook definition of that frustration.
Go on.
So a vocabulary test gets announced, and for me, it was like a red alert, an emergency.
Right? Panic mode.
Total panic mode. I would cram dozens, maybe 100 words the night before,
Yeah.
using all the classic methods,
Or memorization.
the works, repeating the definition over and over, writing the word out maybe 10, 15 times until my hand was literally sore.
Oh, I remember that feeling.
And I'd feel so confident the next morning walking into that exam. But the real tragedy was what happened after.
Yes.
Within a few days, maybe a week or two at the absolute most, all that knowledge, it just felt completely wasted. The words were just gone.
Even the ones you got right on the test.
Especially those. It's like my brain just dumped them the second the test was over. So is that just me? Or is there a real reason this happens?
It is absolutely not just you. I want to promise you and everyone listening that pattern is universal. It's not a personal failing at all.
Okay, that's a relief to hear.
It's just the wrong strategy. You are targeting the wrong memory system for what you want to achieve.
The wrong memory system.
Yeah. When you cram like that, in that frantic, high-stress way, you are almost exclusively activating your short-term memory.
Which is also called working memory, right?
Exactly, your working memory. And that system is incredible for temporary tasks.
Like what? What is it good for?
Well, it's fantastic for holding a phone number in your head just long enough to dial it, or remembering the beginning of a sentence so you can understand the end.
Okay, so it's like a temporary notepad.
A very small temporary notepad. It can only hold, say, 7 or so chunks of information at a time. And here's the crucial part. It has a very, very short shelf life.
How short are we talking?
If you don't reinforce the information, that window can close in at most a couple of weeks.
Up to 2 weeks. That explains my post-exam brain dump perfectly. I was just using my working memory, and as soon as the pressure was off, my brain just...
Saw the information as disposable.
So we're just knocking on the wrong door entirely when we cram.
Precisely. The goal for learning a language isn't temporary storage. The true goal is to engage your long-term memory.
And that works differently.
Completely differently. It operates subconsciously, and it needs a very specific set of signals to decide that a piece of information is worth keeping permanently.
So cramming tells your brain, hey, just need this for tomorrow.
Exactly. And the long-term system just ignores it. We need to create the conditions that tell the brain, hold on to this. This is important for the future.
Okay, so if our brain naturally wants to forget things to save space, how do we fight against that?
That's the thing. We don't fight it. We work with it. We have to accept the reality of what's called the forgetting curve.
I've heard that term.
It basically shows that as soon as you learn something, your ability to recall it drops sharply. You could lose half of it in an hour.
Wow. Okay, so how do we counteract that?
We counteract it by strategically revisiting the information. And this brings us to the most important principle of all for self-learners.
Yeah.
Spaced repetition.
Right. Reviewing things over time. But is it just about looking at the word every few days?
Not quite. The real magic is in something called effortful retrieval. That's the key phrase.
Effortful retrieval.
Researchers found that the best time to review something is right at the moment you are just about to forget it.
When it's a little bit difficult to remember.
Yes, when the memory is weak but not totally gone,
Yeah.
that struggle to pull it back. That is the signal that tells your brain to strengthen the connection. to make it permanent.
Wait a minute, so the struggle itself is what makes the memory stick?
Absolutely. If it's too easy to remember, you don't learn much. If it's impossible because you waited too long, you learn nothing. You need to find that sweet spot.
So you review it a day later, then maybe 4 days later, then 2 weeks later, increasing the gap each time.
That's the core idea. You are strategically increasing the difficulty of the retrieval to signal importance.
But isn't that risky? What if I wait 2 weeks and I've completely forgotten it? Then I've wasted all that time.
That is a great question. And it comes down to how you record the information in the first place, which we'll get to. But the goal isn't catastrophic forgetting.
Okay.
It's about introducing small, controlled intervals of forgetting. That little bit of struggle is the most powerful learning event you can have.
Uh-huh. That is so revolutionary for me. The idea that forgetting is a predictable thing we can actually use to our advantage instead of just feeling bad about it.
It's about working with your brain's natural systems, not fighting against them. That's the whole game.
It makes so much sense now. I was just refreshing my short-term memory over and over.
And that 2-week mark is so important. By waiting at least that long, you're ensuring you're pulling from long-term storage, not just that temporary notepad.
Okay, let's move on from the when to the what. How should we actually be learning and recording these words?
This is the next layer. The first golden rule, and I can't stress this enough, always, always capture words in context.
Not just a word and its definition.
Never just a word and its definition. Isolated word lists are, well, they're almost useless for actually speaking.
I used to do that all the time. I'd write, resilience, toughness. But then when I tried to use it, I'd say something weird like, he has much resilience.
Exactly, because you don't know the grammar that goes with it. You don't know if it needs an adjective like great resilience or a preposition.
And that's what makes you sound unnatural.
It's the classic sign of passive vocabulary. You understand the word when you read it, but you can't use it. This is why we must learn whole expressions or phrases, what some people call chunks.
So, like 2 to 4 words together.
Ideally, yes.
Yeah.
A small sentence where maybe only one word is new to you.
Can you give an example of why that's so much better?
Let me tell you, take that the simple word like look. If you just learn look, it means to see.
Right.
But if you learn the chunk, look up, it means to search. Look into means investigate. Look after means take care of.
Ah, so you're learning the grammar and the meaning all at once.
All at once.
Yeah.
By learning the chunk, you're absorbing the correct usage automatically. It reduces the mental effort because you're not trying to build a sentence from scratch every single time.
I think that also connects to the idea of association, doesn't it? Linking new things to what you already know.
You've hit it exactly. Words are best learned when they're part of a network. They need to stick to other ideas, like mental Velcro.
Mental Velcro, I like that.
So you connect the new phrase to an image or a story or a feeling. This is why it's easier to remember a word like apple than a word like justice.
Because you can picture an apple.
Exactly. You're using both the verbal part of your brain and the visual part.
What about those really big, intimidating English words? How does this apply to them?
Basically, you have to remember that big words aren't just one solid block. They can be broken down.
Like taking apart a machine.
A great analogy. You can look at the word's architecture. Pay attention to the prefix at the beginning and the suffix at the end.
So you're kind of reverse engineering the meaning.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let me tell you. Once you learn that the prefix un means not and the suffix able means can be done.
You've suddenly unlocked thousands of words. Unbelievable, unforgettable, unworkable.
You see, you don't have to learn each one as a new separate thing. You're recognizing a pattern. It reduces the cognitive load so much.
Uh-huh. That idea of just breaking down a huge word like unforgettable into its little parts makes it so much less scary. It's just a pattern.
It's a pattern. And learning to see those patterns is one of the best skills a self-learner can develop.
Okay, that foundation is so important. We have the timing with spaced repetition and the content with learning in chunks. Let's get into the daily habits, the real step-by-step process.
Right. Let's frame this as 5 smart points. Think of this as your daily checklist for how you use your notebook to really make words stick.
Point number 1.
Point. Learn words with their meaning and their usage together.
We've touched on this, but let's break it down.
It means you always record the word as it appears in a full sentence, not its basic dictionary form.
So not just to complain.
No. You write, he complained about the noise. You capture the preposition right there with it. And if a word has multiple meanings, like the word run,
Run a race, run a business.
run a machine, each one gets its own separate entry in its own sentence. And you must include the grammar, the prepositions, the articles. That's the glue that makes the word usable.
I can 100% confirm that. Knowing whether to say agree with a person or agree to a contract makes all the difference between sounding fluent and sounding like a learner.
It's the difference between knowing a word and knowing how to use it. You're creating a template for correct speech.
Okay, that's point one. What's point two?
Point two, say the word loudly in your own sentence.
Aloud. Why is that so important?
When you first learn it, yes, read the original sentence aloud to get the pronunciation. But the most important part is during your review. You have to actively produce the word by creating and speaking a new sentence.
A completely new one. Why not just repeat the one I wrote down?
Because repeating the original just proves you can memorize a pattern. Creating a new sentence proves you actually understand how to use the word independently.
Ah, it forces you to actually grapple with the grammar yourself.
It forces you to deal with pronunciation, sentence stress, and usage problems right then and there. It connects the word to the physical act of speaking.
You know, I think a lot of people feel a bit shy or silly talking to themselves when they study.
It's a common hurdle, but it's one you have to get over. Silently reading is only input. Speaking is output. If you want to get better at conversations, you have to practice the act of speaking, even if you just whisper it at first.
Makes sense. Okay, point number 3.
Point 3. Connect the word with your daily life situations.
Make it personal.
Make it as personal as possible. Your brain is wired to remember things that are relevant to you. So choose vocabulary from articles about your hobbies or your job. And then you use mnemonics.
Memory tricks?
Yes, but effective ones. Your brain remembers things that are funny, surprising, or deeply personal. The science for this is called dual coding theory.
Dual coding?
It just means you encode the information in 2 ways. Verbally, with the word, and visually, with an image. For an abstract word like capricious, which means unpredictable,
Right.
don't just write the definition. Picture something absurd, like a goat suddenly deciding to jump off a table. The more ridiculous the image, the better it will stick.
They actually did that once with the word ephemeral, which means short-lived. I pictured an elf standing on a mural. Elf on a mural. It was so silly, but I've never forgotten that word.
See? It works. That silly connection is far more powerful than just reading the definition 10 times, because you've created 2 different paths in your brain to get to that memory.
Okay, that's a powerful one. Point 4.
Point 4. Revise the word the same day and the next day, and then consistently after that.
This goes back to the spaced repetition idea.
Exactly. It's about respecting the forgetting curve.
Yeah.
So a good schedule could be review it within a few hours, then the next day, then 4 days later, then 2 weeks later, then a month later.
That sounds like a lot to keep track of, especially if you're busy.
It is, which is why consistency is more important than quantity. It's better to review 15 expressions really well every day than try to cram 100 once a week.
A little bit every day.
A little bit every day. And remember that 2-week gap is crucial. You have to wait long enough that your short-term memory has let go of the word. That forces your long-term memory to do the heavy lifting.
We're intentionally making it a little bit hard for ourselves.
Effort is the signal for importance. That is the core of it all.
Got it. Okay, the final point, number 5.
Point 5. Use the word again and again while speaking. And this is about how you test yourself. The best way to review is not to look at the English word and remember the meaning. It's to cover the English word and try to translate the phrase from your native language into English.
So you're testing from your language to English, not the other way around. Why is that direction so important?
Because reading the English word and knowing the meaning only proves you can understand it. That's passive knowledge.
Good for reading, but not for speaking.
Exactly. When you force your brain to actually produce the English word from a prompt in your own language, you are practicing the skill of speaking. You're activating the motor part of your brain.
That's a huge realization. That understanding is a completely different skill from using.
It's the difference between knowing a fact and knowing how to perform an action. This is how you move a word into your active conversational toolkit.
That's a fantastic set of rules.
And if you combine them, you will be amazed at how vocabulary starts to stick without you even trying so hard.
So we've talked about the mental strategies. What about the physical side of things, like how we write, where we study? Does that matter?
It matters a great deal. The physical act of learning has a huge impact on memory. Let's start with handwriting.
I have to admit, I prefer typing my notes. It's faster.
It is faster, but it's not always better for memory. Let me tell you. The memory effect is so much stronger when you write words by hand.
Why is that?
When you type, every key press is basically the same motion. But when you write, your brain is engaging in a complex motor task. The physical act of forming the letters creates a deeper, stronger memory trace.
So the movement of my hand is actually helping my brain remember.
It's another layer of encoding.
Yeah.
And I would suggest writing slowly and neatly. Maybe use different colored pens. If the page is visually pleasing and organized, your brain is more willing to engage with it.
That goes back to the dual coding idea, using visuals.
It does. Always try to connect the verbal information, the phrase, with some kind of visual cue. A tiny drawing, a symbol, a color code. You're engaging two channels in your brain at once, which makes the memory more robust.
Oh, if I were learning to procrastinate.
Don't just write the definition. Draw a tiny stick figure looking at a clock instead of his work. That simple image, combined with the word, creates a much stickier memory.
Okay, what about the environment?
It's critical. Learning works best when you are well-rested and in a quiet, focused space. No TV, no music with lyrics. Your brain can't do effortful retrieval if it's also processing a song.
And sleep. I imagine that's a big one.
It's the most important one. Sleep is when your brain does its filing. It's when the memories are transferred from temporary storage to the permanent long-term archive. If you don't get enough sleep, that process gets disrupted.
So studying late at night when you're exhausted is a bad idea.
A terrible idea.
Yeah.
You're much better off getting up a bit earlier and studying when your mind is fresh.
What about long study sessions? Is it good to study for 3 hours straight?
No, your brain gets fatigued. It's much better to study in focused bursts. Maybe 25 or 30 minutes of intense focus, then a 10-minute break to walk around and clear your head. That little bit of rest helps your memory consolidate.
This is all about creating the perfect conditions for the brain to do its job.
Exactly. Let's try a quick practice run. We've used the word resilience a few times.
Right, the ability to bounce back from difficulty.
So in your notebook, you wouldn't just write that definition. You'd write a full personal sentence. For instance, she showed great resilience after losing the game.
You've got the adjective great and the context after losing.
Now, for everyone listening, just pause for a second, right now. Try to make your own sentence with resilience about your own life. Say it out loud.
Maybe about a tough project at work or a personal challenge.
That simple act, that is points 2 and 3 in action. You're connecting it to your life, and you're actively producing the language. That's how it starts to stick.
And beyond the techniques, we have to talk about mindset, don't we?
We do. This whole process should be pleasant. If you see it as a chore, your brain will resist. If you approach it with curiosity, like a game, your memory will cooperate so much better.
I think the biggest mental block for people is the fear of making mistakes.
Oh, absolutely. People freeze because they're scared of using a new word incorrectly in a real conversation.
Which means they never use it and then they forget it. It's a vicious cycle.
And we have to break that cycle, I think. Actually, mistakes are not just okay. They are necessary. They are essential feedback for your brain.
So making a mistake is actually a good thing.
It's a learning event. When you use the wrong preposition and someone corrects you, your brain pays attention. That correction, because it's tied to an experience, creates a very strong memory trace.
So if you're not making mistakes...
You're not pushing yourself enough, you're staying in your comfort zone, and you're not growing.
That's a great way to look at it. If I'm not making mistakes, I'm not learning fast enough. I love that.
Exactly. Embrace the errors. They are the signposts on your path to fluency. So to bring this all together, let's just quickly review the 4 main rules to take away from our deep dive today.
Let's do it.
First, don't memorize too many words at one time. Focus on quality over quantity. Mastering 15 expressions you can actually use is way better than cramming 100 words you'll forget.
Quality over quantity. Got it.
Second, practice is more important than memory. And the best practice is testing yourself from your native language into English. That's what builds your ability to speak.
Active recall is the real test.
Third, use the words daily to make them permanent. Find small ways to bring them into your life. If you don't use it, you will lose it.
Simple but true.
And finally, number 4. Consistency is the key. A little bit of focused effort every single day is so much more powerful than one long, painful session every weekend.
That's the whole philosophy in a nutshell. You know, the ultimate test for me, the moment I know a word has truly stuck, is when it just pops up in a conversation automatically.
Yes, without you even looking for it.
Exactly. I'm not thinking about the definition or the grammar. It's there. And sometimes it even surprises me. That's the moment you know it's moved into that deep subconscious part of your brain. That feeling of automatic recall is absolutely priceless.
Thanks for watching and listening. Like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Bye-bye.